Okay, thanks for joining me. This is the card that I'll be making today. If you'd have seen this on Facebook when Dawn posted up the event poster for us. I really enjoyed making this one actually, and this is one that I actually had an idea come to me, and I thought, oh, I know what I'll do for my life, and this popped into my head, and it's actually turned out exactly the way I wanted it, which it can actually be quite rare for us card makers. We always tend to deviate and go off onto a completely different tack once we start making, which is fine as well. But to actually have an idea come from your head to actually in your hand is quite a treat for us. What I've done, I've used the stamp and die combination set that Lisa has released. It's the Florals Volume 1. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that's going to indicate that there will be a Volume 2 and hopefully a Volume 3. No pressure, Lisa. But this is an absolutely gorgeous set, and it comes say with the coordinating dies, and we've got an awful lot of hand-drawn flowers here which lend themselves to so many different ways. We've got the stamps, and I haven't actually used the stamps as a scene directly onto a card yet. I just haven't had the time to sit down to do it, or other ideas have taken over. So I'm really looking forward to creating cards using the stamps in that way. But the project that I've actually used them with for just recently is actually including the dies as well. And what I've done here, as you can see, I've actually used them to create like a wreath, and that's basically what I wanted to show you today, how this was constructed. Now if you can see that the way this card is made up also, that I've actually used a square scalloped frame in the background just to add a little bit of contrast to the wreath effect that we have in the foreground here. The other thing that I wanted to focus on when I was making this card, also the fact that it's like monotone. I wanted to keep it the blue and the white, and what I've done, I've actually stamped the flowers onto watercolour card again, which is I'm using an awful lot. If you keep up to date with the lives that I do, you find probably the majority of the projects I do on watercolour card. And I'll tell you for why this time is because I wanted to stamp in blue. I didn't want to stamp in the black. I wanted to keep the soft look, the monotone look, and I tell you what I had in my head. It was the you get the blue and white porcelain. I can't remember the name of the actual style, but you all know what I mean. But the blue and white is just so striking. And what I wanted to achieve is by stamping onto the watercolour card with Distress Oxide ink, meant that I could actually keep that colour tone and actually shade the flowers using the stamped impression. That's what I'll go on to show you actually. There are so many other ways of using these flowers, and I'm actually looking forward to getting to a project where I actually sit and colour them with perhaps Copic markers and do them a lot more lifelike, or perhaps even use coloured pencils and blending solution that way. So that'll all come in time. Who knows, I may even do that for you next week. But say for this time I just wanted to keep to the monotone look, and today I just wanted to show you how, by using Distress Oxide ink, firstly how well the stamps work with the oxide ink to stamp with, and also just how to get the shading look and the different shades. If you actually look at what I've tried to do, some of them are a lot more paler blue, some of them are a lot darker blue, and that's just all using one ink and with a water brush. So that's what I want to show you today, and also how I actually go about constructing the card, in case you wanted to have a go at that also. So I'm using a square card again, so it's one of my favourites to use. I base it off the square blanks that I've got. It's actually a blue card. I've actually used a piece of A4 to create it, but because I've got so many square white card blanks with their envelopes, I wanted to keep it to the same size. So it's working out at about just under 15 centimetres square, which is just under 6 inches square. So for me this is about 5 3/4 inches square, but it will work with whatever size of card that you have, and I think it will also work on like a C6 card, a rectangle card also. So I created the card blank. Again, I'm using a slightly different shade of blue this time. If you can tell, I'm using a slightly lighter one, and instead of going with dark blue on top, I've used a sheet from Lisa's Pretty Petals paper pad. I've used the reverse where you have this distressed crackle look, which is probably one of my favourite looks on any type of design paper, and it's always the look when I ink myself. That's the look that I always attempt to get in the background, and I've just matte and layered that onto the blue card and the white card just to give that a nice framework. Okay, where should I put that today? I'll leave that there so you can see that. Now, I've used the scallop square in the background, and I've already pre-cut one here, and I've put the 3D foam pad on there because that just raises and elevates the wreath up off the page. Now to create this, I've used the, I've actually put it away. Here it is, look at me being efficient. I've actually used the Nested Scalloped and Plain Squares die set. So I've taken this middle scalloped square here, you can see how that is the same size, and I've just used the next die down, which happens to be just a plain square, and I've cut the aperture out in the middle, you see, and that's what gives me the framework. Now this would obviously work with circle dies. I don't have circle dies at the moment, but Lisa has a new show coming up on the 2nd of November. I wonder what might be coming up on there. Anyway, so no more before I get in trouble. Just for the sake of interest actually, just to do something a bit different, I've set this on the diagonal, so we actually have a diamond shape, so you could always work it that way, that would work just as well. And you could actually use this as the framework, instead of building around a circle around the wreath, you can actually build this around the square, that would work as well. But I'm actually going to set this as a diamond, I just like the way that that works, and I'm going to put that on straight away. Okay, hopefully you can't hear that wind too much, it's really picking up again out there. Right, so I'm just going to set that centrally. Oh, and I'll do that by eye, as I do with everything. Just move that across. Right, bear with me. I'll just pop my head in. There we are. So we set that like so. Now we want to build the wreath, and you can either do that by eye, but what I found was a good thing to do is actually create like a circle wreath. Now as I say, I don't actually have circle dies, but you can actually draw around something if you've got something circular, or if you've got a circle cutter. If you have dies that would fit, that would be perfect. This in itself actually is from the mandala set. We have the mandala doily frame, and all I've done here, I've just used the central dies, because that fitted so well within that scallop circle that it didn't matter of the shape of the sun. That in itself actually looks quite pretty like that, because actually this will be covered up most of the time, but I just wanted that framework, so it gives me that guide and also something to adhere the flowers onto. So that's what I used to create that. Now everything that I'm using today is actually available on Lisa's website, thatcraftplace.co.uk. I did go on and check beforehand, so I'm sure I've got some super helpful design team members that will put the links in the comments for me. Actually, I'm just popping over now. I may have said the 2nd of November, but Dawn's just corrected me. It's the 3rd of November that Lisa's next show is coming up. We don't have any times yet, but we'll soon let you know as soon as we hear. Okay, so I have this circle, and this I've actually cut this out of watercolour cardstock as well. It makes it quite sturdy. So I'm just going to add a little bit of glue just so as I can attach this into place, and then we can start thinking about the flowers. So we'll do that like so. So it's not essential that this is perfectly placed. And actually a piece of 3D foam underneath might have actually worked a little bit better, but say it's not essential. I think what I might do, I might put a couple of pieces of 3D foam underneath, just so as we can keep that a bit sturdier under there. We really don't need much. And I'm going to use, okay, my tweezers. I'm just going to pop that under there like that. That will actually make it quite steady. Okay, if you bear with me, you actually see how I work. My brain doesn't always think about doing things in the right order sometimes, and I think the majority of us, to be honest, work like that in our craft rooms, don't we? We have an idea and we go full steam ahead until we realise that we haven't always thought through how we're going to make these things happen. But we're a resourceful bunch, and we generally do make things happen because all the amazing projects that we come up with and share. So there we are, this is working better, isn't it? Okay, I'll just pop that one on. Where are we? Pop one over that side there. As I say, the majority of this is actually going to be covered, so you're not going to see that. Okay, make sure I've got my card the right way around. Okay, so we have our building blocks in place, as it were. So this is the framework that we can build around. I think what I'll do next is actually cut out and sort out the sentiment next, because I want to build this in as an integral part of the wreath, but I don't want to cover up too many of the flowers. For one, because I think it's a waste of the beauty of what we've got, and it can unbalance the wreath a little bit. So we shall go ahead. I've already mounted my stamp onto the block here, and I'm using this other stamp and die set combo, which is just so useful, from Lisa. I'm using the Happy Birthday, but you'll notice here that the Happy and the Birthday are actually two separate dies. Which is great actually, because if you know me also, that I always mix and match the texts of my fonts and the sentiments, so I'm only going to be using the Happy from this. I should use an archiver link for this because, say, having stamped it once before, I know that this works really well. It's a really good colour match. This one is actually Faded Jeans. She'll stamp this onto, actually what I've used here is super smooth white card. Oh, a bit of fluff on there. Oh, honestly, all things are being thrown at me today, aren't they? Okay, so we have the Happy there, which is, say, it's a lovely impression, so easy to stamp even without a stamping platform. And actually you can see the benefits of having the coordinating dies here now. So I'll just add a little bit of sticky tape, because that will actually keep this in place, and we can line that up perfectly like that, just secure with the tape. Now I can die cut this with my cute little die cutting machine. Okay, and you can just see how easy these dies and sentiments are to use. So we have the happy, and what have I done with that? Okay, so to actually create the birthday, I'm using the ticker tape sentiments that we have here. It's the ticker phrases, the DL stamp set. So we have the happy birthday, and I've already pre-stamped that. Now I've actually stamped the whole thing, which would, you know, it looks perfectly good to actually use in itself. You can actually create the wreath and perhaps put the happy birthday through the middle like that. It depends on what you have and what look it is that you want to achieve this time round. But for me today, I'm actually going to snip the happy away. I have a little pile of happies somewhere that I keep snipping off, so I think at some stage I'm going to have to use the larger birthday and put the smaller happies with it. Okay, so we have our sentiment, and I like to put them down in this corner and sort of set them like that. So now that I've got this actually on hand, it gives me something to work around and a framework to wrap my flowers around. So we'll just put this over to one side, over here, and we will move on to our flowers. Now what I've done ahead of time is to actually take an A4 sheet of paper, and I stamped out multiple times, I think 3 times, of the favourite flowers that I wanted to use, and I've die cut them all out. So you can see here, I didn't use the stems on this one. They're usually for larger cards or for other different uses for those, but so you have a lovely selection here. I've already stamped them out, and as you can see here, and I've die cut them, and I've actually started colouring a lot of them in already. Now what I will do, just to show you there's no trickery involved, and you know, things do actually happen as I say they do, I will actually stamp one of these images out for you and show that you can, how they can be manipulated with a water brush and the ink. And what I'll do, I'm going to take this little sprig, this foliage sprig here, because I've actually taken advantage of the shape of this and just done something a little bit different with it. I'm going to get my stamping block. Now you can see that this has a slight curve on it already. Lisa has drawn it that way. But when I bring in the card, it doesn't quite match to the sort of the curve of the circle. And if you can see that it doesn't actually take much to bend this stamp to actually fit this curve. So what I thought I would do, I would actually just curve that just slightly so that fits the curve of the circle or the wreath that I want to create, and just mount that onto my stamping block in that way. And if I just bring that back over, and you can see that still actually follows. What that will do is actually help mould the shape of the wreath all the way round. So I shall come in with my Distress Oxide. We should ink this up. Now Distress Oxides are actually really good to stamp with. They do bring out detail because of the nature of the ink that they are. Actually, I'm just moving that round. This has been through the die cutting machine. Now, and I'm just going to stamp that. And I'm just going to rock that backwards and forwards just a little bit. I mean, it's not something I would actually recommend you normally do, but because I've just manipulated the stamp slightly, it just makes sure that just by rocking gently that I will actually get a good impression of the whole stamp there. And you can see Now, because we have manipulated that stamp a little bit, you know, to bend a little bit more, it does mean that if I bring in the die, obviously that isn't going to die cut for you this time. But these are so easy to cut out. Just say I've cut these 3 out here that I think is possibly worth just that little bit sort of less inconvenience of not being able to die cut these, just to get the curvature on that piece. But it just shows how flexible that these stamps are. And once you've stamped that, just peel that off of your block and you can see that that will go back to its original shape, no problem at all. Obviously you don't want to keep that on the block for too much and permanently misshape the stamp, but just for the purposes of the couple of seconds that you're actually using that, that is a really good tip to use. Now I'm bringing in a water brush and you can see that now if I start working on this, that we can start actually shading these images with the ink that we use to make the impression. And say I've brought in just a clear water brush here, it had no other ink on it, and you can see that I didn't pick up any ink on the nib from any ink pads, and you can see that I can actually start creating that shading just using the ink that we stamped with. And that's what gives you a beautiful tonal coloured image. And that is the idea, the technique that I've used to colour all of these flowers here. Now you can see the difference in that. You don't even need to be colour things perfectly. You can leave little bits of white, and as it dries it just gets more tonal. Now I shall show you how I perhaps carry on and do some of these also. Now we've got some stems here, and because we are just using the monotone, obviously we want, we have to be a bit mindful that we want some sort of light and shade to create some interest with these flowers. I'm actually coming in with a distress marker. It's chipped sapphire, so I'm still using the same colour as before, and I'm just going into the stems just to create some darkness on this image. And then I can come back in with a water brush and I can just fill in the rest of those stems and just move that ink about. Now I just need a little bit more water on this one. Now the great thing about Lisa's water brushes is the control that you have with the water that comes out. It is a lot more considered and a lot more controllable than many of the water brushes that I've used. And actually you can see now that that ink is moving a lot quicker. There we are. So we have the lovely dark contrast of the stem. Now I can start coming in and start colouring these flowers. Now I just think this is a beautiful look in whatever artwork that I see actually when I'm looking at other people's watercolouring for inspiration. I just love that you get this tonal sort of rough watercoloured effect, and I've got an awful lot to learn, I know, with painting, but using techniques like this, it gives me the look that I actually know what I'm it looks as if I know what I'm doing, but it gives me a look that I can actually be really quite proud of and happy to put onto a card. And each actually image turns out to be quite different. Now these are like sweet peas, and I shall use the same technique here to actually start colouring. Now you can be mindful and looking at the image to see where a lot of the shading would be, so perhaps take into account where some of the darker lines would be. But you can see it gives you such a subtle look, and you can just, I think just by adding these few dark lines, it makes the whole image, sort of far more authentic. that little bit of shading also with, say, with a darker colour. And it also gives you the light, you know, the light and shade when you actually come to build the wreath. Now, we have some thistles there, and I think I've done the same with the thistles. Right, let's start building now. We have all the components here. If I need to colour in a few more of these, then I can do that in a second. Ooh. Okay. So now this is where the fun starts, and this is where you see the advantage of having everything sort of cut and coloured and on hand for you. So this is where you can actually start playing. Now what I'm actually going to start with is these. Actually, I will colour this. I will start with these sort of over curved sprigs of foliage here, because I think if you start your any sort of floral arranging, and I'm no expert at this, Mum will tell you that I'm hopeless at arranging flowers. I really do just like to put them in a vase and sort of away we go. But I do know that any strong sort of floral arrangement does start with, you know, a good framework. And you can see here the advantage of having these floral sprigs actually curve really well to the shape of the circle there. Now you could actually cut out 6, and then you can have just those floral sprigs work just for themselves. That would look really pretty, wouldn't it? If you imagine, if you actually line them all up around there together and have them all the way round, I think that'd look gorgeous. What do you think? But so we've only got 3 this time, and what I'll do, I shall start with attaching these to this wreath. Now you can see the advantage of having the white ring there. It actually gives me something to attach these floral pieces to. Okay. Now these don't have to lay flat either, because this actually starts adding to the dimension of the flowers also. I think it works really well. So now we can start bringing in some of these bigger pieces, and I think this, adding these pieces, it just really brought it to life. I got quite excited when this first one built up really well. So I think what I might do, because these have a slight curve on them also, there's a natural flow to these, so I think I'll add these on next. And actually what's great about doing this card today is, although I've got a slightly different background which will make it look different, but I'm actually going to rearrange the flowers in a different way also. So that's going to give this a completely different look, which is exciting when you make cards. Although we like to batch make, very rarely do we like to actually make identical cards. I don't anyway. So even if I am batch making and I come up with an idea, I do try and vary sort of positioning and of images and things as we go along. Okay, so we can add those like that, and that glue will take. And actually I think it actually works against the paler background on this as well. I think what I might do, I might add these sweet peas just down here. Now if you have like a silicone glue gel also, I think that would be a really good glue to use when creating this, because it allows you that little bit of movement also. Actually I think what I might do, I might just come in with my sentiment just at this stage, just to make sure that I get that in. Although I don't think it will go down here this time, I think I might put that along here. So we should add that in there, I think. And then we can start building around that. As I say, what I don't want to do is put it somewhere where it starts covering up the beauty of some of the flowers. So if I actually put that in there as an element and then start working around that, it actually appears to sit within the design a lot happier. Happier to my eye anyway. Let's say the beauty of this sort of thing is that people's eyes work in different ways, and what works for some people when they're arranging it doesn't work for others. But I can't say that I've ever seen a wreath that I've seen somebody else build and I think, oh, I don't like that. I've tried to build things myself and it doesn't quite work, but I think that's how you perceive design sometimes. But I think that's working quite well. And you can see, say, the flow that we have of the images there. And all I'm doing basically, I can see that circle sitting there in the background, and it's that I'm using as a guide. And you just seem to naturally reach for what works best where. And you can see already that how quick this has actually built up. So the actual putting together of the card is actually the quickest element, I think, of building this, I would say. All the prep and stamping and the colouring beforehand, say, takes a lot more time than it does to actually start creating. So I'm just going to put that thistle in the background there. Let's put the birthday on. I'm going to sit the birthday just there, I think. Now, I really like this against the pale background actually. One thing I did notice, I mean, I love the dark blue in here, but I did think that the background was just a little bit plain. It could have done with perhaps a little bit of stamping or a little bit of embossing in the background there. But this paper from the Pretty Petals pack works just perfectly. Now, it could be that I've completely overstamped and I don't need most of these flowers here today, I don't think, because I think that in itself works really, really well, and I should just leave that, I think, as it is. Now, just a tiny bit of detail just to come into the background, just to finish off. I don't know if you can quite see, but if I tilt that towards the light, but what I've actually done is highlighted this scalloped frame with a few of the flat back gems. Now, Lisa bought these to us a good while ago and I have used them, but I have still so many left. These are the colours here, the greens and the purples and the pinks, and these are the sparkliest flat back gems that I've ever seen. They're not actually coated on the back, which allows the light to go through them beautifully, and also they pick up the colour of the project underneath. Now, all I'm doing, I'm just adding a dab of glue to the scallops in the pattern here that I can actually see. What I didn't want to do is put the gems all around the frame beforehand, because the chances are I would have covered them up and then that would have been a bit of a waste, wouldn't it? So the way we get around this, and us as frugal crafters, we only decorate the parts that we can see, which makes sense, I'd say. So I've put a dab of glue there in each of the scallops, and I can go around with my super picky up tool, which coordinates lovely, and I can add those gems there, and that just adds just a really subtle sparkle in the background. And I know Dawn will be loving this part. She does like her gems. As do we all. But as Dawn says on her lives, it wouldn't be a Dawn card if she doesn't add a gem to finish off. So I'm just going to pop one in there, in the background. And I'll just glue there. Now these are a lovely light blue colour actually, so they'll pick up the light lovely. I'll just put one in there. Okay, there we are. Now, sorry, look, here we go. I'm just going to add one in there because I thought I'd forget. And that will be the last one, I promised. There we are. Okay, I'm happy with that. So there we are. We've used the same technique and we have two cards that look completely different. So one's a lot lighter than the other. And I think it's perhaps even something that you could give to a guy as well. A guy who likes the garden. Especially when it works in the blue like this, and you could possibly even do it in like greys as well, sort of the true monochrome with black and white. I think that would look stunning also. Okay, let's have a quick look at the... Oh, hi, Lisa's with us as well. Lisa Robson and Natalia. Oh, lovely to see you all here. And Jane. Oh yeah, and thank you, Jane. You've put some links onto some of the products that I've used there. Oh, you've put them all on. Oh, fabulous. Well done. Okay, I think I'll love you and leave you then today. I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope it's perhaps given you another idea and you give that a go. I'd look forward to seeing whatever it is that you create. Do pop your projects in the group, into the Crafting with Lisa Horton group, because Lisa has so many products out there now. There are some fab ones coming to the next show. What the design team has done with them so far is just amazing. So can't wait to share those projects with you. But do keep in contact with us within the group. I mean, we're here to help you, and we say we love what we do, we love what we're working with. So I shall love you and leave you for this afternoon, and see you next week. Take care, everybody. Bye.